let's go right to, ground zero, man. Like,
Yeah.
life's good. You're an All-American punter at Syracuse.
Yeah.
How did things change?
Dude, so I went into my senior year. My biggest concern was like what NFL team I was going to end up being drafted by, what city I was going to end up in. I went in with the mentality that I just need to do what I've continued to do. And, I'm going to be able to live my childhood dream of playing professional sports. Pretty much almost from the jump, our second game senior year was at the University of Washington. So we had a long flight, cross-country flight. We get in and go to dinner, come back from dinner, like don't feel well, sick, throwing up, whole 9 yards. And, didn't think anything of it. Fast forward next morning, getting ready, drinking, Pedialyte in the locker room, trying to replenish the liquids and go out, play, have a great game, and, on to the next thing. Every away game my senior year, I ended up getting sick. And it was one of those things that it didn't happen consistently enough where you're like, oh, there's something wrong, until it kind of got to the end of the season and I was having headaches. I walked into the Carrier Dome in Syracuse and I'm like, man, like are the lights like brighter than usual? Like what's going on? So I started to develop the sensitivity to light. Thanksgiving morning, 2010, I wake up and hadn't been out the night before, wasn't doing anything different, normal routine, woke up and can't stop throwing up. And I was living on South Campus. I'm probably at 3/4 of a mile from the football facility. I was able to about after 2 hours pull it together, get down to the facility, walk into the training room. I'm like, hey, there's something's not right. And so they're like, all right, like, let's see how you feel throughout the day. Day goes on, start to feel a little bit better. Playing my last game against Boston College, ironically enough, Mark Herzlich, a local guy, he's been through it. Playing the last game against Mark and Boston College in the Carrier Dome, played awful. And I didn't know, like, honestly did not know when I went to drop the ball, if it was going to hit my foot. Like I kind of had like lost coordination. I was really struggling. And so go back to the trainers. I meet with the team doctor on that following Monday, and doctor says, hey, we're going to just start ruling some things out. So they send me down to a hospital in Syracuse, get an MRI, walk in to meet the radiologist. And I said, like, hey, like, how you doing? I played a Division I football game 48 hours earlier. I didn't feel great, but I was fine. Like I walked in, could handle myself, like whatever. 5 minutes into the MRI, lady comes out. She's ghost white and she starts talking real fast. She's clearly very nervous. I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, are you okay? Like, do we need to get you some help or something? She's like, no, I'm fine. Like everything's gonna be all right. So I go back to the team facility, sit down, and I don't know how it was for you, but at Syracuse, if you had like a season-ending injury, you went into the training room, you met with the team doctor, a couple of coaches were there, the training staff, hey, sorry to tell you, like you tore an ACL, or whatever. So I walk into the training room and the whole training staff's in there, like half the coaches. And so I was just like, damn, like this isn't good. Like, what are you guys all doing here? And nobody thought that was funny. And so I sat down and the doctor said, you have a large growth in your brain and you need to see a specialist first thing in the morning. And it honestly didn't even like land. It didn't resonate. I was like, okay, like I don't know what you're telling me. I called my dad because I knew I couldn't have the conversation with my mom. So I called my dad and I said, hey, like I got a large growth in my brain. I got to see a specialist in the morning. My dad's like, yeah, I just left your mom at your aunt's house. Your Aunt Chrissy was diagnosed with breast cancer today. So in the span of about 8 hours, my mom learned that her youngest sister was diagnosed with breast cancer, and her youngest and only son was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And so I went and saw a specialist the next day in Syracuse, and probably within 10 minutes, he was like, hey, like, where are you from? I said, I'm from Philly area. My family's there, all my people. He said, you need to go home, be with your family. Flew me home later that day, and I met with a specialist at Jefferson probably like a week later, and sat down, and they just said like, hey, you have to have brain surgery. We're going to have to take the tumor out. And from there, we were optimistic. Like I was still in that mind frame. I was still taking calls from like, the East-West game, the Senior Bowl. They're like, hey, like, you going to be good? And I was like, yeah, I'm bounce back. Like, we're good. And I have surgery. So I spent my 22nd birthday, December 13th in the hospital, getting prepped for brain surgery, shave your head, whole 9 yards. December 14th, go in, have surgery. Surgery goes really well. Like, as far as brain surgery, if you can get 60% of the tumor, great. They got 90%. Come to find out, that 10% that was left is a little bit of a concern. It's in the center of your brain. You gotta, we're going to do the test, biopsy, and we'll get back to you. So 6 days later, December 20th, I go back to the hospital, and doctor walks in. He's clearly very nervous and just says, hey, like, do you guys have a history of brain cancer in your family? And before I could say no, because I didn't think we did, my mom says, that her dad passed away at 36 from brain cancer. And he turns to me and says, there's different grades. There's grade 1, which is pediatric. There's grade 2, which is less benign. Then you kind of cross a threshold into grade 3, which is like an aggressive form of brain cancer. And in my head, I was like, please stop counting higher and higher. I was like, this isn't trending in the right direction. Yeah. So he says you have a grade 3 anaplastic astrocytoma. So there's no cure for what you have, but we're going to try the best we can. And it was that day that I realized, like, I had worked all this time, invested all this time. I realized probably around like sophomore year, like this was a possibility for me to live my dream. And like from that day forward, it was like, hey, I'm going to do all the things I can off the field and on the field to set myself up. And that day, in the exam room at Jefferson, just like everything just evaporated. And what I didn't realize was like I had an incredibly long battle ahead of myself. I'd finished surgery. I had 14 months of chemotherapy and radiation to go through. The 5-year survival rate in my diagnosis at the time was 15%. So things weren't looking good. And doctors and nurses had basically prepped my parents for like, hey, like your son may not live but another 36 months. And so when this all went down, it was tough. And so my aunt, she's going through her breast cancer diagnosis. My family's had a tough run with cancer in general. And so I go through this treatment, come out 2012, doing well. Things are going good. Got clear scans. My teammates start the Syracuse chapter of Uplifting Athletes. And for probably the next like 3 years, I just was like, this is something I'm passionate about. I want to give back. And go up, I talk to the team, go talk in the community, kind of rally support. And in 2016, I reached out to the founder of Uplifting Athletes, a gentleman named Scott Shirley. And I said, Scott, like, can I do this full time? And fortunately for me, he was kind of in a transition part of his life and said, hey, like, yeah, like, come on and join the team. 6 months later, we hired Brett. And the funny thing was I played against Brett twice in college before I ever actually met the guy. And we don't talk about it because we got absolutely pumped both games. But he's great. And so we got to work together, and we took this organization that had such a great mission, such a great concept, and we put a lot of time and love into it. And the impact that it's had now is pretty remarkable. And so that's kind of my synopsis of where I've been and kind of what we've been doing and with regards to Uplifting Athletes over the last few years.
How's your health now?
13 years, 1 month, and almost 13 years and 1 month to the day, cancer free. So
wow,
I'm doing good. Go back every 4 months, get an MRI, but things are good. I told you, man, every day's been a blessing for me. I have things, when I was diagnosed here, I never dreamed of being 30 years old. never dreamed of having a house, never dreamed of being married. I have all those things. I have an amazing wife and an awesome home, and a job that it doesn't even feel like work. And I feel incredibly blessed to have all those things, to be where I am. And I just know that I've been extremely fortunate, and I just want to pay forward all the things that have been afforded to me. And so that's where the work that we do with Uplifting Athletes is so incredibly, important to me, and just passionate about what we've been able to accomplish as an organization.